next time. officially,
is the end
I
of
guess.
the calendar year.
Mm-hmm.
members of the board. You guys know I go by Gay Williams, it's my middle name. But we always list Frances Williams, which is my first name. If anybody was trying to figure out who that was, there's a lot of Frances Williamses out there. So just when we list board members, if we could list the name I go by.
I go by my middle name too, so I fully understand.
Yeah, it's all our lives, right?
On page 20, is that the page, the minutes that you're talking about?
I didn't see on 20, I might have missed it, but on 22 is where
22, okay, I'm sorry, I was grabbing my computer.
Gave term reminders in her
Gotcha.
Gay's seat.
Okay, yes. Okay, we'll get that corrected.
Thanks.
And then the first part of the minutes where it has the attendance is what you're talking about, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we can
No
definitely.
biggies. Thank you.
Yes, thank you for telling us.
Any other questions, comments, concerns related to the minutes?
We want them to be as accurate as possible, so I appreciate the notations.
Thank you, Al.
Thank you.
All right. That takes us to Ashley for an update on the board and committees.
Good evening, Ashley Gentry. Good to see you guys again. So what I'm going to go over is what has been going on with the updated resident advisory policy and where we're standing at with the board. So a little bit of context, back in December of 24, December 17th, at the work session, Mayor and Town Council approved several changes to the town's resident advisory boards. So one of the major updates was to transform the Transit Advisory Committee into what's now called the Multimodal Transportation Advisory Board. MTAB is the new acronym. So along with this name change comes with more of a expanded focus, right? More of a broad focus for your board. So instead of only looking at transit, MTAB will now look at biking, walking, transit, and any other related infrastructure. During the same time, Mayor and Town Council also increased the voting members and added one youth voting member, representative. So now MTAB will now be made up of 9 voting members, including one youth voting member, representative. So how did we get there? How did we go through that recruitment and application process? So following the council's approval of revised application process, the clerk's office ran a recruitment campaign from April 7th through May 16th of 2025. So to fill positions for across all boards. Previously, we would bring that back to you for your board for discussion, nominate, to bring that back, to Town Council. Well, in order to meet Town Council's deadline, which was July 1st, and you guys did not meet, we could not do that. So we gathered all boards, did the same exact thing, and took that to Town Council because they gave us a deadline of July 1st. So all applications, board leadership roles were submitted to the Mayor and Town Council for a review and approval at June 24th meeting, Town Council meeting. So what happened there? So the following members that were appointed to the MTAB Advisory Board. So the new members are Tan Shadow is our new member, Noah Tope is a new member, and Mark Spinoli is a new member. We also have Miss Gay Williams, who is not a new member, but she was filling a partial term. So she was reappointed for the full 2-year term. We did not receive any applications for youth, and I believe there are two members who are going to be leaving us, so we will also re-advertise for those positions as well. We do have, the mayor did elect Linda Barrett as our next chair for the multimodal, so MTAB, so congratulations on that. And the new member, Noah Tope, is the vice chair. So he will be coming in as vice chair. So after all that was done, the clerk's office sent out appointment letters to the new appointed members and the reappointed members. So they congratulating them on being appointed and reappointed. So they're also required to attend upcoming orientation, both new and reappointed members. So we are going to go over the orientation process, just like you guys have done, and also go over the new resident advisory board administrative policy. So those members were given 2 options to attend, and so we are still setting those up. The members who are currently members, you guys are going to be receiving the resident advisory board administrative policy. So you don't have them yet, but they're coming. So after all that's said and done, that is where we're at today, with existing members, appointed new members, reappointed members, and we will have to re-advertise for the youth and any other vacancies that are upcoming. Are there any questions?
So I didn't count. Does that leave us with a vacancy other than the youth?
Yeah, because they're leaving, and we'll have 9 members. So we'll have, 1 position and 1 youth.
1 adult and 1 youth.
Yeah, to re-advertise. And that can be in the bus. We can, we normally advertise on all, our social media platforms. So any feedback on advertisement where you think is fitted, please let us know. Also, the expired members, there are cupcakes like Shannon said, but from the clerk's office, mayor, and town council, we will be ordering you guys some plaques, some special plaques from us. So that's about it from me regarding just the where we're at with the background on the advisory board policy and committee updates.
Thank you, Ashley.
Question, Ashley. Did I see, and maybe this is for a different segment, but it seems relevant here, that we are going to start meeting bi-monthly?
Yes,
rather
that
than
was
quarterly?
approved. When I go over the calendar,
We have it later. Okay.
yep, so we will go over that. So,
Okay.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
I believe that's our next agenda item.
That's okay. So everybody's good, though, with that overview process and where we're at with that. Okay? So the next agenda item is the fiscal year 25-26 Multimodal Transportation Advisory Board calendar. Previously, you guys were meeting quarterly. Now, the feedback we gathered, you guys, and also the addition of the expanded board title, so you are now going to be meeting bi-monthly, which is every other month. So I just want to make one note here before I move forward. I did receive feedback on one new member who proposed if the time of the start time for the advisory board to start at 5 instead of 4. I'm bringing that to your attention because it was brought to my attention, and that is an option if you choose. So just keep that in mind. 4 o'clock has always been established, I think, from the start. So I don't know if it's ever been discussed on changing the time. So it's your preference, your board, whenever you guys can meet, just let me know. But as of right now, we have every other month, second Wednesday, meeting at 4 p.m. here at the council chambers. Also to note, the agendas are always on the website Monday prior to the meeting. So that's where anyone can go there to view for any reference. Our meetings are now conducted live stream in the chambers. And if you cannot attend a meeting, please let us know, please let Katie know, Shannon know, and your chair know. We do track attendance now, so we do need to keep up with if we have a quorum for that meeting or whatever we might need to do on the backside of things. So that is it for the calendar. What do you guys think about the time, the start time?
Question, is that doable for staff? Because that's changes your days.
Yep.
To speak for myself, it works for me personally. I think one thing we do want to note is we might have additional staff members joining us as the scope of the board increases, and I'm not sure about them.
And I
don't know if you
can't
know.
answer today either, whether a change would work for our new staff who will need to participate.
Okay.
And also to clarify, I think the request was for after 5 because of the workday. So
Okay.
probably, 5:30 at the earliest.
Most of our boards will meet, 6 o'clock is the average time for our advisory boards. We do have our planning board who meets at 4:30. This board meets at 4. So we do have a variety of times for advisory boards, but it does, we do need our staff here, professional staff and our staff liaison. So it would need to be a mutual decision among the board and the staff.
And I think that having the input from the new board members would make sense, because
Okay. So maybe this is a discussion for another,
For the next meeting.
for the next
Yeah.
meeting?
I think it's appropriate to let the new members, once they're seated, participate in that discussion. Just my perspective on this is that, just dealing with matters specific to transit, these meetings have run long.
Mm-hmm.
Recently, we've done better at keeping on schedule, but the matters we're discussing haven't been quite as in-depth or technical. My concern would be that adding now bike and pedestrian and all of the related infrastructure issues that, starting at 5:30, 6, whenever, could push these meetings during times of a busy agenda to 9:30, and I don't know that that's something that
Yeah.
anyone
Although we
really
would
wants to
meet-
be doing. So
meeting every
just
other
putting
month,
that out
too,
there that
so.
Sure.
should be
Yeah, it wouldn't work for me, but that's just me.
Right. Well, it's great discussion, great feedback. So what I'm hearing is maybe bring this back at the next meeting and let's have some more discussion and feedback with the new members. And then we'll adopt this new calendar then. Does that work? So, but we are going to meet, I guess the next meeting will be September 10th, which is bi-monthly. We will meet at 4 o'clock since we're not going to change that time yet. So that will be our next meeting, and I'll come back then and we'll have more discussion on that.
It may be good to know, for those of you that will be returning, if that is going to be a conflict. Because we've got one member that's saying that they can only meet after 5. Did I hear you say that would not work for you?
Right.
Would not work for me.
So, I think we need to hear that feedback if there's any other
Mhm.
scheduling conflicts now.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, we're going to be in the same boat at the next meeting. So, and this is the last, as Ashley mentioned, this is the last meeting under this adopted calendar. So therefore, the September meeting will be a special meeting because you're electing not to set a date for the next meeting.
Are we electing not to set a date or not to change the time? I don't think we're electing.
Well, we've got the date.
So the adopted calendar that's on the website goes through July. So
Right.
if you're not willing to adopt this calendar or make a decision on time, then we have no calendar that's been adopted.
Yeah.
If we adopt it today, we can always
Amend it.
set an agenda item to discuss and possibly amend at the next
Mhm.
meeting. So,
Oh.
all right, do we have on that basis, do we have a motion to accept the schedule as printed currently?
Let me see what's printed. Yes, I move to accept the
We have a-
calendar as printed with the start times as indicated at 4 o'clock,
So that
but
was
meeting
Gay
by
Williams
monthly.
with the motion and Linda with the second. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that motion carries.
Okay.
Chair.
Chair.
I just want to mention that
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right. So I will see you.
Andy, you might want to say that out loud because the recording may not have
All
picked
right,
up
so
what you said.
that motion also included an intent to reintroduce this agenda item for further discussion and possible change to the schedule and start time at the September 10 meeting.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Yeah, I have one more kind of follow-up question to that. And possibly for the minutes too, would you want members to share their availabilities so that we can kind of work through them at the next meeting, or are there
I think it would.
make certain times?
I think just come prepared, know your availability at the next meeting, and we can hash it out then with the new members. Easy for me to say.
Y'all figure it out.
Sounds good.
Yeah, we'll shelf that.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
All right, so Katie, you're up with the update on the transit prioritization study.
Although I got to switch over to the PowerPoint real quick. Okay, are you seeing the presentation?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. I'm going to skip through the administrative items. Okay, so for this item, I'm here to present updates and seek feedback from you all on draft staff recommendations that were developed for the transit prioritization study, and which is currently out for public comment and review right now. Because of the timing of our meetings, we're doing this meeting during the public comment period, and we're going to take your feedback as well as any public comments we receive about draft staff recommendations as input before final recommendations for this project are finalized. So, just a reminder of where we are with this study. I think we spent most of last meeting talking about it. We are now in our public comment period. The idea is end of July into August, finalize the recommendations for this study, bring them to town council for acceptance, either late August or early September. Not quite sure which exact meeting yet, but one of those, with the idea for us to be able to move forward with implementation soon after that, once we have sort of direction on the priorities for transit expansion and improvement in town.
You're going to bring this back to the committee on September 10th?
So that's a good question. That meeting would be probably after they're accepted by town council, so we likely won't have another meeting before now and then.
And Katie, I just yesterday saw an advertisement on Instagram from the town soliciting public comment on this. When is the actual end of the public comment period?
It's Sunday, August 3rd. So yeah, there's, I think we have a little summary of what we're planning to do for that. So it opened on June 27th. We send out an email to our transit plans and services email list for the town. It also was part of the town newsletter, the online newsletter that the town has. And I guess it was yesterday, they're getting the social media blasts going for it. We are working through the hard materials. We kind of had a end of fiscal year blackout for purchases, but we're putting a channel card up in the bus as soon as we can. And we're printing flyers and postcards to distribute as well for that. This is not, we're not planning to do quite as big of an effort as we did for the first survey, because a lot of people, we kind of front-ended the feedback we needed for the project towards the beginning, but we're still advertising and seeking feedback for the draft recommendations this summer.
Have those cards on the bus in the next week?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yep. Maybe by Friday even. We'll see.
Maybe.
And then it's been kind of, the comments have been trickling in. When I made this presentation, there were about 35 participants, and I checked today and there were about 45 participants. So we're getting people's attention on it. So, yeah. So I guess before I get into this, we do have the project web page available, which has the draft recommendations, but I don't think we've actually gone over them as a group yet, because when we met in April, you provided feedback on sort of the initial set that we were working through, and your feedback, along with other feedback we received from staff and our colleagues at Go Carry, kind of went into refining that list into what we thought would be the top priorities. And that list was somewhat constrained by the timeline we have for this study, which is 0 to 5 years. What could feasibly be funded and implemented during that time period. But that being said, today we can talk through that if you all agree with that or not, or if you have other thoughts. So I don't want to talk too much, but what I'm thinking about doing is just kind of walking through the recommendations, and we can either stop and talk about each one, or if you want to wave me on, we can wave on and we have a bigger discussion towards the end. So does anyone have any initial thoughts about that before we get into them?
I don't think so. Let's dive in and see where it takes us.
Do you have any additional placards available for us to distribute, or would that be appropriate?
I'd be happy to. I don't have them today, but I can get them to you.
Okay, or I could pick them up.
Yeah, I'll have some. So yeah. So this is just a list form, but I'll also have maps on the following slides. I think it'll honestly be easier to go through the maps than just to read you this table of what the recommendations are. So there are two sets of recommendations that we kind of came up with. The one set is routing concepts for future fixed route services in town. And the other set is everything else, basically, that we would recommend to do within the next 5 years to help support transit in town. So that could be non-fixed route service, capital projects, other studies that we might want to conduct, and things like that would support transit in town. So I'm going to kind of walk through the fixed route list using these maps. So the first draft priority was to essentially implement the things that we've already gotten funding approval for, but haven't actually implemented yet. And those main things are implementing Sunday service on Go Apex Route 1, which we've gotten funding approval for, but haven't implemented yet. Adding additional service frequency on Go Apex Route 1 to bring it to 30-minute service instead of hourly service to match Go Carry's operating schedule, which would mean 30-minute service Monday through Saturday between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m., and then hourly on Sunday from 7 a.m. to 9 p.m. That's typically how they operate their routes, and we would match that. That's what we have funding approval for through the CFA program. And then also continuing our bus stop improvements that we've gotten funding approval for that are in design at this point.
Katie, did you say we do have funding approval for the change to a 30-minute?
Yes, so that was one that we had applied for CFA funding for FY26, starting in Q4 of FY26. And that was approved just this past June, really, as part of our FY26 Wake Transit budget. And the reason why we picked Q4 is that was the soonest Go Carry was able to commit to having a second vehicle and operator available for that.
I remember you shared that with us last time about the availability.
Yeah. So it's not something we can do immediately. We have the funding approval starting in Q4 of FY26. So it's essentially nine months from now. So that's kind of what was listed as the top draft staff recommendation.
You said you're going to do all three of those all at once in Q4 of 26.
The Sunday service, we actually have funding approval starting in Q2, which is this fall. We're still working through the logistics with Go Wake Access about being able to operate it. We're waiting on contract renegotiations that they're working through with their service provider, our ATP Dev. So we don't have it 100% confirmed yet.
What's the third one? Remind me.
Bus stop improvements.
Thank you.
Yeah. And we're working through those now. The idea is to advertise, work through easements and advertise for construction bids this fall, which will likely be installation in spring because they don't do a lot of concrete work over the winter. It just takes too long to cure.
Okay. I don't want to get too far off subject, but as the Multimodal Transportation Advisory Board, when are we going to start thinking about sidewalks connecting to where we want the buses to run? Or can we start to consider, I'm just trying to figure out when we're going to, of course I won't be on the board anymore, but that being said, at what point are we going to start to realize that? I'm thinking places like Chatham Street. Shannon, that has been discussed forever between Saunders and Hunter, and it still isn't happening. So it's places like that that I'm curious, at what point can we assume that people can walk from those places, those apartments, over to Hunter Street rather than to Salem to catch a bus? So that's what I'm starting to wonder, when we're going to implement the whole multimodal portion of it.
Yeah, I think the idea was this was sort of our last real TAC meeting in terms of our agenda.
That answers my question.
And then the next one would broaden out a little bit. And just thinking out loud, maybe one thing we could look at for a future agenda is just like, what is the state of all of our sidewalk projects? Because we do have a lot of sidewalk projects that are in various states of progress right now, which it doesn't always look like it because there's no construction happening, but they're in the works. So that might be a good agenda item to bring.
That's particularly exciting.
It's going to be a whole new orientation for the whole board, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I do think some elements of the orientation that we do does need to be for the whole board because there's new scope. We do have a sidewalk prioritization approach in place now, and that's something that Councilman Gant specifically wanted the MTAB to take a look at and, consider whether updates are needed. But we do have a prioritization for transit connections. And many of our sidewalks that are in development are funded through transit.
Okay.
So it is something that we are looking at and prioritizing already. The Chatham Street sidewalk is funded. It's in design.
I've heard that for a while.
So, I know. Sidewalks take longer than you want.
Yeah, I know.
They take longer than we want.
It's also complicated.
But yeah, we will bring that back on a future agenda to kind of provide an overview and opportunity to provide input on that process.
I'm sorry, Andy, I sidetracked.
That's okay.
That's a great question.
We've got 20 minutes.
I can make the Wake Transit item shorter. We can do that. Okay, so the next priority for possible fixed route improvements was actually a route concept that would be similar to Go Apex Route 1 but would just serve different areas that aren't currently served by Go Apex Route 1 right now. The just like concept name is Pine Plaza Pleasant Park, a lot of P's. And it would basically go through downtown Apex, but in a more northeast southwest direction, serving the Pine Plaza area up to the northeast with Costco and Academy Sports and all the retail and apartments up there, and then come downtown and also go all the way down South Salem Street to Pleasant Park and kind of try to serve the Depot 499 development and the Scotts Mill area before going back to downtown. And this is scoped out to be 1 hour runtime route, similar to what Go Apex Route 1 does. But the idea would be to match the frequency that we're looking to do with Go Apex Route 1 with 30-minute service Monday through Saturday during the day and hourly night and Sunday.
What is the targeted time frame for the new route?
Yeah, so at this point we're looking more like a implementation start date for FY28. So we're in FY26 right now, so July to June, this coming year. FY27 would be when we would be able to potentially install new bus stops, work through the contracts with GoCarry or whoever, is operating it, and things like that, because that FY27 is kind of our next grant cycle that we would be able to get through the Wake Transit CFA program. The FY26 grants were due 6 months ago, so we kind of have to work ahead for the grants. And then the idea would be we could start at the beginning of FY28 with service.
That would technically be calendar year July 27, yes?
Right.
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
All right, yeah. I think in money years, but that's not the same as calendar.
Mm-hmm.
You have 3 conceptual routes depicted here. I'm presuming the purple one here is our preferred.
Yeah, so that was seen as the probably most by staff as the one that would hit the most destinations and most people with another 1 hour route in town. And we've had a lot of requests for being able to serve downtown and being able to serve the library.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And so this attempts to do that.
Okay.
Katie, maybe you're going to talk about this, but can you speak to the overlap with Route 1?
Yeah, so as of right now, there we go. Can you see my?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. Really, the only place it would overlap is right here in downtown, and everywhere else, like Route 1 doesn't go up here or down this way.
Mm-hmm.
The idea would be to set up the schedule to do pulse point transfers downtown, which means you would be able to transfer in either direction to the route from someplace in downtown.
That'd be great.
You would have to do that more closer to town campus, wouldn't you?
So
Unless we get a multimodal hub here in the next year and a half.
yeah, we would have to decide where that would
Yeah.
take place. It could be near, don't know my orientation, the Mason Street Municipal Building in the near term, with the idea that we would work towards a downtown mobility hub.
The area on Laura Duncan, the Food Lion, might be an option too.
Yeah, it starts to get too far away from downtown.
They both overlap right there.
Yeah.
There is a lot more room
array of fives there too, but
Yeah.
that's that note.
That would be great though, because even if it's running on a longer schedule, the fact that you can get off and get on one that's going the other way would really amp up the convenience factor, I would think.
Yeah, that would be,
Increase our ridership, hopefully.
yeah, that would be an important factor, definitely, to consider with any fixed route services in town, especially when we're operating half-hour or hourly service, so.
Short of a hub, would Mason Street or Town Campus be that location?
That's probably the default that we would have. And it's near our existing layover that we have for Go Apex Route 1, which would allow buses to loop around. So even if two vehicles couldn't be on the street at the same time, they could drop off, loop around, pick up, you know, so we could make it work.
Great.
And then the next priority, we're going back to Go Apex Route 1 here, is actually to make tweaks to Go Apex Route 1 routing. This was really in response to strong feedback we had on our online survey that the top destination people wanted to get to was downtown, and just wanting to be able to get in and out of downtown easier. We had also, you know, worked a little bit with economic development about trying to do like park and rides and things like that for holiday events and things like that. And I personally noticed that not a lot of people took us up on that. And I have a feeling it's because the way that the circulator routing works, you only pass through downtown once on the route. So you have to kind of ride the whole route to get back to where you came from. And this would kind of eliminate that issue. It would serve downtown essentially twice along the route, both eastbound and westbound. And it also includes a couple other tweaks to potentially increase access to the Walmart to help us get into the actual parking lot of the Walmart. The closest bus stop's like a quarter mile away right now because of the way the...
Up a big hill from Walmart.
Yeah.
Yes, yeah.
You mentioned this last time. Is there any more headway?
Not as of right now, but we are continuing to look at it.
One thought about this is that the downtown access would effectively be doubled by the increase in frequency to Route 1, which is already funded. So we would be basically doubling up on that with this route.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't timed it out exactly, but you would be going from, you know, possibly 45 minutes from where you're coming from on the route to get to downtown to probably no more than 15 minutes to get to
awesome.
downtown.
That would be amazing.
So, yeah.
You said overwhelmingly the feedback online was downtown service. That's in the current outreach or previous?
The survey we did last year.
Okay.
It was more of asking people about preferences on what they wanted to see.
Okay.
It was more
Well,
open.
it wasn't necessarily even that they did or didn't ride the bus. It was just where do you want to go the most?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so again, these are still concepts. They might need a little refinement, especially the exact downtown routing. And, you know, so the lines are not necessarily finalized, but the idea would be to, you know, make these changes. I do want to point out that that means if we do this, because of the amount of time we have and the way the roads work, that there would be a few places where we wouldn't serve anymore on Go Apex Route 1. Mostly, we wouldn't go up the Peakway towards Ambergate Station, so we wouldn't be hitting the stop that's up at the Villages North. Mm-hmm. We wouldn't be hitting a couple of stops on North Salem Street, and then we wouldn't be hitting the stop on Hunter Street near Hillcrest. So that
Feedback.
so
Yeah.
those would be sort of the cons of changing this routing.
So
I'd want to see what the
yeah,
detailed.
I would be interested in
Yeah.
knowing what that looks like. Basically, the gray area would be a decent enough way to depict taking away that portion of the route versus not.
And timing wise, would this be targeted for the same time frame as the other proposals?
It's interesting because the gray area is not even the route. It's really just the.
That's the.
It's the.
Yep. What does
it's
the
a
gray area?
door-to-door service.
It's the door-to-door thing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a 3/4 of a mile boundary around the routing, which would be our Go Apex door-to-door federally required service area.
Any of that decision around taking off that portion around ridership at those stops?
We did look at it. Ridership is actually not very high at those stops.
Okay.
Like, I don't have it in front of me, but not very high. The highest ridership stops tend to be around the shopping centers,
Sure.
which is understandable.
Yeah.
But it's not like nobody's using them. So my guess is that once you start getting close enough to downtown, because downtown is a major draw, a lot of people are maybe choosing to walk or get to downtown another way. That's just one.
That's assuming downtown is their only place that they're trying to go.
That's true.
Well,
yeah.
as somebody who would use the North Salem Street, I'm one person, but that's the closest stop for me. Part of the issue is it doesn't go straight downtown. It goes to Hunter Street and takes a right, right? So it's all, you have to make your most educated decision about where to stop and where not to stop. So
It's never perfect.
no.
And another aspect of this I did want to point out is it's hard to see on this map, but there's kind of like a mauve colored line coming in from Cary. That is the new route that Cary is working to introduce to connect downtown Apex and downtown Cary. And that will be coming down North Salem Street. So it'll be coming down to Center Street, coming to the Mason Street Municipal Building, where we're working with them actually to time it so that you can do time transfers this November, and transfer to Go Apex bus from there. But that would get you from North Salem Street or to downtown. If you're up at Villages North, you would have to walk over to Salem Street to catch it. But yeah, so there would be some service. It just wouldn't be the same.
Well within that 3/4 mile. It's well with, yeah. What was I'm trying to think, there's a number out there that you've given us. It's a 1/4 mile that people are willing to walk to a bus stop. Was that the?
Yeah, so the kind of rule of thumb for like a regular local bus stop is 1/4 mile to maybe a 1/2 mile is about as far as people are willing to walk. Most people, there's like a gravity curve. Like, of course, some people are gonna walk farther than that, but yeah.
You're gonna walk a 1/4 mile to ride a bus another 1/2 mile, or are you just gonna get in your car?
Yeah, and depending on various personal factors, different people make different decisions. So yeah.
Okay.
And then we have another fixed route service concept that we're just calling the Viridia East Village Loop. That is actually a 1/2 hour route, so not an hour-long route. It's a 30-minute route, that would actually go down to the new Viridia development in town, where there's a new Wake Tech campus that's planned to be built, as well as a mixed-use center with lots of apartments and things like that. This, we're proposing to time more with the build-out of that development. There's nothing there right now. So, I mean, there's tree clearing happening right now. That's about it. But Wake Tech has told us that what they're aiming for is to open their new campus for the fall of 28, which would be the start of FY29, just for that. And we have been working with them to pre-build bus stops in this area, because this is part of the town's transit-oriented development context area. The developers have known that, for many years, and are working with us to make sure it is able to be served with transit. And it is, there's a lot of development that's going through the review process right now. I don't remember how many units it is, but it's like in the thousands somewhere, over 1,000.
In Viridia? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. So that was the idea behind that, was be able to provide that connection from one mixed-use center to downtown, and future Wake Tech campus.
Yeah, conceptually, it looks great, but we don't know anything yet.
Right, it's hard to kind of picture it. So, yeah.
Okay.
And then the last fixed route concept is another 30-minute route. The idea could be that they could interline with the Viridia one. It would be to go out Center Street towards US 1 and serve a few multifamily developments, as well as the Lufkin Road area.
That's the industrial.
Yeah, business park area. This was like the last, priority for the fixed route priorities at this point. I will say it also has been the on the lower end from the comments I've peeked at so far. But we felt it was important because it serves a school, a park, which was also an important thing in our survey. Middle school. That doesn't really have any other access. Lufkin Road Middle School is kind of by itself.
Yeah, it's by itself. So, I mean, it's a concept. I just don't see the point for serving Lufkin Road.
I mean, there's not a whole lot out there that would drive a lot of ridership.
I mean, there's the apartments at 1. Sure, but how are you going to get? Right? I mean, a loop kind of makes more sense, but I think if this had to happen, I would lean less against doing Lufkin Road, unless you're trying to serve 55, and then Lufkin is just your connection.
You mean
Or
like
is that
loop all
even
the way
in
to
there?
55?
I'm sorry?
Were you saying like loop all the way to 55?
Yeah, like I just assumed.
It doesn't go there
Oh, okay.
right now. I think this is appropriately identified as the
Last.
Oh,
lowest
the circle
priority.
Yeah.
is the whole business park.
Yeah, I can.
I gotcha.
It would loop
Okay.
around and then come back.
Conceptually, I would say skip out the industrial park and link it with 55, and let's do the industrial.
Katie, what drove that Lufkin Road being pulled into a scenario?
Yeah, so we're looking at, one, Center Street itself has been a request from many folks who live in the area between downtown and US 1.
Kind of a no man's land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
It makes sense that
yeah. So they wanted access to downtown. It's like a little bit farther than some
From
of the other
Center
areas.
Street to US 1?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, as well as the two fairly large multifamily apartment communities that are there. We had heard feedback from like Apex High School that there are kids who, live there, go to Apex High School, and often don't end up having a ride to get home, and they're walking all the way home, and things like that. And there are a lot of jobs in that business park area. We did talk a little bit about what might be the actual demand on transit to those jobs.
Was there any transit requests specifically from any businesses out there, or any potential businesses that are looking at that area?
We have not heard that directly from the businesses. Yeah. So it might be worth exploring a little bit more.
Would this be the only option that would serve? I know there's a mobile home community that's nearby there. Would that community have service? And one of the other options, I don't know, I don't think they have service nearby now.
Yeah, this would be the closest, but
it wouldn't have to include Lufkin Road for that to happen, right?
Right. We would have to go quite a ways around to get service there. So
see this more as, again, skipping out the industrial park, and when Jesse Drive happens or something like that, and looping it back again, back over to 55. But
you could almost combine it with the
Viridia portion, but that eliminates the 30-minute portion of it.
Well, you take 2 30-minute routes and make them a 1-hour route. It's the same thing.
I was just thinking, if you're going to go, and I have to picture in my head, but if you're going to go from Center Street to 1, you're not far from that mobile home community, I don't think.
Okay.
I may have it wrong in my head, but I think one of the streets comes out near that intersection.
Okay.
Just thinking that might be some potential ridership there. But this is your 4th concept in priority. Okay.
Any other comments for Katie on this one?
Okay. I had prompted us with questions on these, but I think you have given good feedback about them so far, but just wanted to check in. I mean, how are you feeling about the inclusion of these items, the order of priority, and is anything missing?
I think you did a good job covering the areas that have been subject of feedback, particularly with the first concept. I think the potential for increased frequency to downtown there's really no downside to that, only upside. It's great. And I think the concept 4 is appropriately identified as the lowest priority right now. Anybody else?
No.
The library is exciting.
Yes. That was
Would
one
you
that
mind
Go ahead.
For me, please, Katie, just to hit 1 and 2 again.
Well, so 1 is actually technically just making the improvements we have funding approval for.
I guess I'm talking about concept A and B.
Okay, gotcha. Okay.
Hard to see.
This was the.
Yeah, it is hard to see.
Sorry.
This is Costco to.
This is the new
Pleasant
route,
Park.
and then hit concept B for me again.
These improvement ones.
B was modifying Route 1. Okay. Okay.
But really, they could happen at the same time.
Yeah, you get a lot with A, so I totally agree with what the chair was saying. You get a lot with that.
On the library particularly was one that we tried so hard to include in the original Route 1, and it just would not work from a timing perspective. So seeing that we can now add it in is a good thing.
I mean, it's very interesting that it's going to Pleasant Park as well. time will only tell what that ridership looks like in 2 years.
Yeah, that is sort of the question about the park right now, because the park gets a lot of demand. I will say that, like, it's used quite a bit. What I'm not sure about is, would that particular stop have a lot of all day, use, or would it be in the evenings, weekends more, which might happen. But there's also a ton of apartments and development happening up the road at Depot 499.
It's
will
all heading
charge
that
too.
way.
Who knows what that will look like for anyone going from 499 to Pleasant Park during the day that just doesn't want to drive over there. So who's to
On the
during the week.
Scotts Ridge community has been a big source of feedback as well regarding transit availability. So it's good.
Yeah, and you get the crisscrossing in downtown, right, in this one. So you effectively reduce the travel time if you're able to sync up the
And the
create a
concept
transfer.
B was increasing the buses as well. So having two alternate. Okay, good. So you guys like putting A in front of B?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Yeah, we're already increasing the frequency of one outside of these concepts. So
But you
given
also
that,
said
I like adding A
first.
over.
But you're saying you can do them
Concept
both.
B.
Theoretically, we might be in a position where we can do both of them at the same. Great.
I mean, being able to reach, and that just gives so much more visibility to transit. So people become more aware, and you can hop on at Pine Plaza and go all the way to.
And it just hits so many of the places that people say they want service.
Yeah, we had a brief taste of service to the Costco area with Go Triangle Route 305. They tried it for a couple months, but they couldn't do it in both directions because of the left it from Pine Plaza to Laura Duncan. So they're not serving that area right now, but we, still would like to.
Yeah, and there's a lot of apartments back there
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So
64 will continue to be a sticking point for that
Right.
route.
yeah, and Shannon has mentioned there is a project identified by NCDOT to make a grade separated crossing both at Laura Duncan Road and at Shepherd's Vineyard Drive. And that could, that's like 5 years from now probably.
They've been 5 years out for 10 years.
But that would also
They are
facilitate-
restarting design now.
That's good to know.
Yeah, so that could facilitate that too.
So is that what is helping? Because I thought I remembered us having a conversation about it being difficult at the library to turn around.
Yeah. So interesting tidbit that I found out, I didn't know this, but the town actually owns the property of the library. It's operated and leased by the county. And so we would have to talk to the county if we were to do anything to make any improvements to, like, install a bus stop, concrete, that sort of thing. So it still would require discussions. Either way, it is a difficult spot to get a bus in and out of. But we feel it's important enough that we try everything we can to do it. So, yeah. Like, worst case scenario, the stop would be nearby, but not in the actual, parking lot of the library.
Excellent.
Good stuff, Katie.
And then there's also other things that we've identified that we can keep working on, like, concurrently with these ideas to help kind of further the utility of transit in town, to look at. And there's some competing priorities in here, so we have them ordered, to give direction on the priority. But one is just to continue to support the federally required Go Apex door-to-door service and expand as fixed route services expand. So this is more a requirement than a recommendation, but it's kind of showing that this is kind of the top priority of, you know, other things that we would do in addition to just fixed route service. 2 is explore options to serve seniors and those with disabilities who are outside the Go Apex door-to-door service area. We've gotten a lot of requests over the years from folks who live in other parts of town who don't have a lot of other mobility options because they're seniors or the people with disabilities who don't drive, and we don't have a great alternative for them right now. The county operates services, but they're often constrained in the number of trips that they can provide, and they don't operate on the weekends for a lot of those programs and things like that. So it's something to explore. That's what we have on here.
Does Go Triangle, do they look at us expanding new routes, and how do they reevaluate door-to-door service based on adding a new route? Do they ever come to you and say, hey, look, we can't pull it off. It's too much more ground to cover by adding, let's say, the new route, the purple route. Do you ever get that kind of feedback? Because I mean, we have really great numbers for the fixed route services as far as percentage wise, but for whatever reason, do they ever say, hey, look, we don't have the bandwidth or we can't cover that kind of ground?
So are you talking about like the Go Wake Access who operates the door-to-door service? For that service, no, because we pay the county for that. Is that what you mean?
Well, I just want to make sure that, I'm just wondering, do they ever give you feedback of, is it like, sure, no problem, we are ready for you to start this new route, and therefore we can supply these services to the 3/4 mile radius? Or are they like, okay, we're gonna have to run the numbers and figure it out?
Yeah, it hasn't been so much the service area. Sundays has been a sticking point for us because they don't do a lot of service on Sundays through their other programs. So that's one thing, that's the reason why we're still working through Sunday service. But they already operate throughout the whole county. They just have constraints for their other funding programs that they offer that might also operate in the Apex area. And so if we, as a town, were to say, we will cover the cost of those trips, you know, they would be able to operate them. They would, but we'd have to be under a contract with them or something. Or we could explore other options beyond Go Wake Access, but that's just one idea. And then, so keeping going on this list, the next one would be to support phase 1 of the proposed downtown mobility hub, which phase 1 doesn't mean anything to you right now, but we did a feasibility study with NCDOT that was recently approved that identified a potential location, which is at Salem and Moore Streets near downtown, so just south of the main downtown area, north of William Street, as a potential mobility hub location. And phase 1 is essentially a transit transfer area. Phase 2 would be a potential future passenger rail station, but they could be phased independently of each other. We have no idea at this point if we will get passenger rail service, but we could always start with the transit hub and see where that takes us into the future.
So given the other priorities we've discussed, particularly with adding service routes and increasing frequency and making changes to existing routes, I think increasing the priority of the transfer area is a appropriate. It really is essential if the other things you've presented are going to be put into place. For all of them to work as envisioned, you're going to need that.
That or something that approximates it, yeah. So the more routes that operate in town that we want to facilitate transfers for, the more we would need to have that hub. So yeah, I'm just saying the same thing you said.
Right, yeah,
So,
no, I agree.
Number 4 is evaluate land use policies for transit supportive development as part of the comprehensive plan update. So the town of Apex is kicking off an update to our long-range comprehensive plan this summer, very soon. And this is something we would be looking at anyway, but it just kind of highlights potentially maybe we need to be looking closer, you know, as we're developing these priorities, to ensure that if we're committed to transit, that we also need to ensure that development meets the need to be transit supportive. I said that backwards, but if we're looking at changes to our comprehensive plan, is our vision matching what our priorities are? And transit supportive development can look a lot of different ways. It often looks a lot like walkable development. And we know that's a priority for a lot of folks in town already. Mm-hmm. So just more of a staff level activity. Number 5 is investigate transit signal prioritization in town, which is more like a technical tool that you can use where transit vehicles could communicate with the traffic signals in town to help facilitate green lights when the transit vehicles are going through.
Like the bus rapid transit feature you talked to us about, right?
Yes, so bus rapid transit, this is a very common feature with that. Emergency vehicles often have this feature as well. And they can be, you can actually prioritize transit below emergency vehicles a lot of the time, you know, but it's something that can help, especially in more congested conditions, to help just keep the transit going and not get bogged down by all the red lights. And 6 is explore options to serve others outside the general fixed route service area. Others meaning in addition to those with disabilities or seniors. So general population, kind of. And there have been requests to serve other areas of town that we just don't feel are ready for fixed route service, but there might be people who live there with mobility needs and might not qualify for Go Apex door-to-door service per se, but still need a transportation option. So this would be kind of just more planning level work to investigate what options could be available. Was that maybe like subsidized Uber rides, like, you know, creative ideas that we could look into to serve those areas where fixed route service just likely won't work. And then last is just an ongoing recommendation to support improved pedestrian and bicycle connections to transit. We're already working through that, but it would just be to reiterate that is a priority. Oh, and I had illustrations of those that I forgot about. So this is what a potential rendering of that mobility hub could look like. Here's
what are we looking at?
Salem Street. This is not north-south oriented. So this is William Street and Salem Street. This is going towards downtown. This is going south.
Mm-hmm.
Here's Moore Street, and it would potentially allow for, you know, transit transfers in this area. Yeah. Where there's like a little town parking lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
So with this idea, phase 2 would not be any giant construction. Let me back up. Phase 1 would not be any giant construction, land acquisition or anything like that. It would, except for maybe the wooded area in green. I guess I'm just curious if phase one requires acquisition of any building property.
It looks like it's in the existing lot.
My
Well, I know the
understanding-
tree
yeah.
portion, I'm pretty sure the tree portion is not the town's. The town is only currently leasing the parking lot.
So phase one would rely on a new connection to the adjacent commercial parking lot so that the buses could move through there.
So that they can
So,
move through and
to
not
the-
have to
The
turn
left
around.
of what we're looking at.
Mhm.
Yeah,
So they just loop through.
okay.
Makes sense.
So only phase two would be anything grand and huge.
Phase two is where the grand
Okay.
vision starts
All right.
to come together. There would be still, surface improvements with phase one, bus stop improvements.
Okay.
We actually included a restroom building with phase one,
That's nice.
but it would be locked.
Mhm.
Primarily used for the drivers or when the town chooses to open it for other purposes. A lot of security measures, things like that, but not platform construction or any kind of grade separated crossing construction.
Okay. I like phase one.
The step.
Yeah.
And Katie, we're bumping up on 25 after, so we are way over our
Yeah,
time here.
if you want, I can, the other items are informational. The Wake Transit update is something I can send to you all over email. It's, sorry, I forgot I had pulled these from a timed presentation. And you can provide comments to me over email for those updates. There's nothing too major at this point with that. And yeah, so I can, those were all the other items, and I just had a kind of a sample implementation timeline, which would kind of give the idea of how we could
Can you put
work
it
through
in
these
slideshow?
items. Yeah.
Can you email that?
That's what I
Yes.
was gonna ask too.
I'll email the slides out to you guys.
Yeah, perfect.
We need a giant screen.
Yeah. we
Yeah.
do.
Yep. And this is subject to change, but, we're just kind of thinking through how we can accomplish this.
It's in a slide. It's concreted in.
Yeah, can't change.
No, it's tentative. So because we're short on time, I'd be happy to gather additional comments from you all through email, or if you just want to give me a call and talk through it, happy to. I would encourage you to go to the project webpage, which is apexnc.org/transit study, and fill out the comment form if you have any other thoughts that we didn't talk about, or just talk to me directly and we can go through those. So yeah, but I guess we won't take any more time on this item.
If we put it on the transit study website, then it gets gathered in with all your feedback, right?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
it would be in with all the public comments received.
Okay.
And these were just references in case we needed them, but I'm not going to go through them. Wake Transit Plan update is happening. In September, there will be a public comment period about it. That was kind of the big thing I wanted to let you guys know about. That's coming. I'm going to skip all the way through to the bottom, and I ended the slideshow somehow.
And Katie, you're still on the hook for an informational update item. We're bumping right up against our time here. I did have one question about the cost per boarding and on-time percentage, and I don't know that you necessarily have a direct answer for this now, but I noticed that starting in January, our average cost per boarding has increased significantly, and there's been a slight drop in average boardings per trip, which obviously makes up some of that increase in cost per boarding. but we're talking about like November 24, we were $32 a boarding. Now we're in January of this year, almost 43, 42.86 per boarding. So was there, I know we had been renegotiating, or the town had been renegotiating with Go Carry. Is this reflective of a significant increase in direct service cost, or what is, because it can't all be driven by just that small drop in boardings.
So it's a combination of two factors. So it's the number of people that are riding, and it's our cost per hour, our operating cost. The operating cost is fixed at a yearly rate. So it would have been July 1st to June 30th is the hourly cost, is set for the fiscal year. It has gone up every year, and will go up again this year, and will likely go up again next year. This is, ever since the pandemic started, it's been how costs have been going for us, that they've been increasing. But it really makes, so the costs are fixed. They operate service every day. What becomes variable with the cost per rider is how many riders we have. So the more riders we have, the less the cost per boarding is. And so when we have lower ridership, the cost per rider goes up.
Yeah, I understand that. It just, the ratio doesn't add up. Like in November, we had 3.38 average boardings per trip and an average per trip cost of $32.62. And then in January, we had 2.89 boardings per trip, so a half a person less per trip, essentially. And we're more than $10 more per boarding. So that's like a 25-ish% increase in cost per boarding and a significantly lower decline in average boardings per trip. So why did the ratio change so significantly without something else changing?
I can look into the numbers. It's possible there's an error in there somewhere.
It's consistent through all of 2025, though.
Okay.
I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, yeah, and that's why I thought that maybe the fixed cost went up significantly starting in January, but you're saying it's based on fiscal year.
Yeah.
So there should have been no change December to January.
One other thing that does fluctuate is the number of service days per month. So if December had fewer service days per month, that could potentially affect it. But I'll look at it to make sure it's not.
So November did have one more service day than January. Those are the two I'm comparing. So November 24 to 25, January 2025 had 24 service days. We have one additional service day.
But additionally, February has less service days and a less average
and lower boardings. Right. So yeah, there's something funny about
a lot fewer boardings, which of course drives that average boarding.
Yeah, there's something funny about those numbers. If we could better understand the ratios there, it would be helpful for the committee, just to make sure we're looking at.
I know you're in constant discussion with the service provider, but it is kind of disappointing. I will say for myself, and probably Andy too, being here from the start, we were dealing with 94-95% on-time average, and the most recent one was just under 77%. That being said, I don't know if they're having like bad bus issues or what's going on, because I have seen a couple instances where they skipped a route because they didn't have a driver or what have you. I'm assuming, based on my knowledge of the service, it's just kind of disappointing, and I really wish that they could increase that percentage back. But they don't have to answer to MTAP.
Yeah, we have been in several conversations with Go Carry about it. Their analysts did look through the on time, and we've identified a few potential issues. One is we have had some vehicle issues, which if you need to swap out a vehicle or something like that, it totally ruins the on time for that trip. If you, we've had our, when we changed our schedule around to serve the senior center, we introduced 2 more time points that are very close to each other. And so if you're off by a minute, you're now off by a minute 3 times instead of 1 time, which kind of affects it. We've also looked at, there appears to be increasing delay happening along NC 55, which has, we're looking at which time points were having the most issues, and it's the ones that after you're coming south on 55 seem to be getting behind schedule.
Where it stacks up.
Yeah, they're getting stacked up at Salem Street, especially in the evening, like the 5 p.m.
Yeah, it's terrible.
time period. Yeah.
I'm gonna use June 12th as a specific instance. My daughter was trying to ride the bus that day because I was stuck at work and couldn't take her where she needed to go, and I said, just hop on the bus. Whole long conversation about I don't want to. Anyway, that being said, she was there 10 minutes early. The bus never showed. I ended up having to go pick her up. That's beside the point. While I was out, after I dropped her off where she needed to be, there was a bus on the route, and I just assumed that it was, catching up with its time, but it was out of service. So they were running, I don't know, they were running the route. Whatever happened, they skipped that time. And I know that's only one instance, but something like that is really throwing your percentages down if you have to skip a whole
circuit.
Whole circuit.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe more than one, right?
Yeah, and maybe more than one. I mean, I just assumed that the driver had driven too long and they were waiting on a new driver. But
I don't know about that specific instance, but we can ask about it.
I'm just saying, that throws off percentages drastically. And if we're constantly having bus issues and we're constantly skipping routes, then this goes back to 5 years ago where we said, where does the accountability for the service that they provide start or stop? I don't know which is the right word, but do we have to wait until this gets to 50% for us to go, okay, we got to figure something else out, or do they automatically fix themselves?
And the accountability is certainly a concern, and then the rapidly increasing costs per boarding are also a concern.
Well, if you're missing
where's the break point is where I'm going with this, and it would be beneficial for the town to provide this committee with an understanding of where that break point is. What are the fixed costs per year for Go Apex Route 1 as it exists right now, and at what point does it become the same or cheaper for the town to directly provide the service itself? There is a number there that can be pretty directly quantified, and it should be very clear where that break point is. You can introduce some subjectivity when you start trying to put values on the lack of accountability or the degradation in service quality and things like that. But in terms of the direct service cost itself, there should be a clear, very easily and directly quantified break point to where it's cheaper for the town or the same for the town to do it itself. Notwithstanding any desire on the council to do so, but I think it behooves it behooves this committee to be able to provide the council with that information, and if necessary, a recommendation given degradation in service that it might be a worthwhile investment for the town to provide the service itself. Anything else, Nick, Gay, Wendy, Linda?
Yes.
I have one thing before we close, if you're getting ready to close.
I was, yeah.
I just want to thank you
Oh.
and thank you, Nick. It's been great working with you. Less than a year for me, but I appreciate all that y'all have done. It's obvious that you've been investing your time, energy, and effort in this work for years. And I just want to say on behalf of the town, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Appreciate that.
Did you make that slide too?
No, I didn't even know it was there.
I wanted to echo that as well. I've worked with y'all for years, and y'all have been amazing leaders for this.
Thank you.
This advisory board. So thank you for all that you've done. It's been amazing. Y'all have done a great job.
Thank you, Linda.
Yeah,
Certainly enjoyed it.
yeah.
And you really make a difference.
Absolutely.
My daughter is disabled, and this is how she gets everywhere. So it's huge difference in her life. So thank
Great.
you.
Staff implements.
I'd like to say thank you to Shannon and you, Katie, and all the folks in the clerk's office and Parks and Rec and Economic Development and everybody else here. You've made the work of this committee possible with everything you do. So thank you. And to have implemented this service in the speed with which it was implemented is pretty impressive. And it really showcases the talent, Shannon, of you and Katie. To have pulled that off is pretty awesome. So thank you for doing that.
We appreciate it, and we will definitely miss you. You know, I appreciate that you have been open to this whole idea, to help to make it happen, but also very inquisitive and, thoughtful about how we move forward, always asking good questions. So it's been wonderful to work with you both in a variety of capacities, but on this board as well. And I also Katie has it on the slide, but the staff ad hoc members, I might be using the wrong term there, but
Ex officio.
which one?
Ex officio.
Ex officio, thank you. Angela, Joanna, and Lauren are also not, going to be official members of the board anymore. And we're going to miss having them here too, but we'll keep working with them in other ways.
All right, well, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
If there's no other items, then we will officially adjourn.
And get a cupcake. Thank you.
Get a cupcake. Make sure that's in the minutes.
Yeah.
Get a cupcake.